Well, this is taking a while.
Yeah. Who knew it would take this long?
Yeah. Felt like it took 3 months.
Welcome to Freshly Brewed Comics. My name is Jake.
And I'm Victoria.
And this is the show where we
drink coffee and talk about our favorite books.
Welcome back.
We have matching shirts now. We got cups.
Matching cups.
Shout outs to Lisa and Dan.
Shout outs to Lisa and Dan.
My aunt and uncle who made these beautiful custom cups. And let's just get into it. This week we're going to do a whole recent reads themed episode just to catch up on the few months that we've been lying dormant.
Yes, we've both been reading a lot of books, but we picked 3 of our favorites of this long hiatus to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, 3 books we wanted to highlight from our recent reads.
So, which one did you pick first?
So first up, wanted to talk about Daniel Clowes' 2016 graphic novel, Patience.
I remember you liked that a lot.
Yes, I did. I really like this book. Daniel Clowes, if you remember from our first episode, I talked about the Death Ray.
Mm-hmm.
That was my first Daniel Clowes book. I've now read like 3 or 4 of his stuff. And I have to say, this is probably my favorite of everything he's done.
I like the cover a lot.
Yeah.
It almost reminds me a little bit of, it's like Mike Allred, that kind of pop art
Yeah,
style.
they both have that. I mean, they were both kind of in the alt comic scene in the 90s, which has recently become one of my favorite periods of comic books. Up there with like early Vertigo and Proto Vertigo and Silver Age Marvel, which before were my 2 favorite periods in comics. But now, the 90s alternative comic scene. Yeah! I love that shit. Fucking, we got people like Daniel Clowes, who's probably the most famous. I mean, he was on The Simpsons, which we watched that episode last night.
That was funny.
That was good.
Daniel Clowes, Art Spiegelman, and Alan Moore.
What does he say? Mouse attack or something like that?
Yeah.
Mouse is in the house.
Mouse in the house. That's what he says.
But Patience. Patience is about this guy on the back. His wife, Patience, is her name. She gets murdered, and he becomes obsessed with finding her murderer. And so he goes back in time, and through this, time travel, you kind of see Patience's backstory. She gets developed as, a young girl. She gets developed as like a young, late teen, early 20s type person. So you really see what makes her who she is, why she ends up with him in her original timeline when she died. It's kind of just really cool. I thought the only downside is that if you're really paying attention, you could kind of guess where it's going. So it gets a little predictable towards the end, but it's a really good journey. I really like how Daniel Clowes draws all the characters. Like there's a section in the book that takes place in the future around like 2030. And instead of having, rigid panel borders, he makes them rounded to make it look more futuristic.
Oh my god, that's
which
cool.
I really like that, like little touches like that in my books. He uses weird panel shapes in the future, so it really just has this futuristic and alien sense to it when you're reading it, which is really cool.
That is really cool.
This book was just really good in general. And I really like the character of Patience. I like the main character. A lot of the side characters are really cool. Like, a lot of, the futuristic people he meets are really interesting. Yeah, it was just overall a great read. If you like time travel, you like romance, you like weird sci-fi stuff, this is definitely up your alley. It also has that alt comics feel to it.
Nice. And it's Fantagraphics Comics.
Yep.
Right?
Fantagraphics puts it out, and they always put out good shit. So, Patience. Cool. With Daniel Clowes.
I want to highlight something that I'm still currently reading it in bits and pieces because I don't want it to end. It is CAMELOT 3000 by Mike Barr with interiors by Brian Bolland.
Yeah, that's actually, this is one of his only interior works ever.
Yeah, and I love, of course, everybody loves his exteriors. Or
his covers. Yeah.
But this book is really interesting. I got this at Ollie's, I think, for like $5. This is the deluxe hardcover edition. So basically summed up what it is it's the year 3000 and an evil alien race has taken over all of Earth, and the only people who can stop it is King Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table.
Wow.
It's a wonderful wonderfully flat colored. Really awesome read.
It's probably the only time you could find Brian Bolland with flat colors.
Yeah. And it looks great. I mean, the story centers around Tom, who is on the run. He's trying to get to France to outrun the aliens. And he just stumbles upon King Arthur. And then they work together, and Guinevere comes in, and what's her name? Queen Merlin, yes, all of them. And it's really fun. And Merlin acts exactly the way... Merlin and King Arthur, I have to say. King Arthur is just like... Because he has no idea anything futuristic, because he's still stuck in whatever year Camelot was. But they get into a spaceship to fly away, and Tom's trying to fly it, and he goes, "What is this?" And he starts bugging, and Tom's like, it's fine, and we're just gonna fly away. And he's like, okay. And it's just a really awesome read. It's a cool twist of two eras that you wouldn't think to put together, and I really recommend it.
We have another star of the 90s alt comic scene, Chris Ware, with his seminal comic book masterpiece, Jimmy Corrigan, the Smartest Kid on Earth. This book, explaining the plot doesn't really give it the credit it deserves, because the plot is really just this guy, Jimmy Corrigan, who's kind of a simpleton. He lives a very sheltered life. He's middle-aged, has no one in his life other than his mother is the only person he talks to. Mm-hmm. So, off the rip, it's like a really sad story, because it's got this sense of melancholy to it that really only Chris Ware could bring to the table and make interesting. But he gets a letter from his dad, his absentee dad, that he was like, "Hey, just want to reconnect with you." This late in his life. He's like 40-something. I think he's like 43, he says. Mm-hmm. So the whole book takes place with him and his dad, having this awkward meeting. And there's also another story going on at the same time. In the late 1800s in Chicago, when the World Fair was coming up, like the World Fair that like everyone in the world went to in Chicago. It was like one of mankind's crowning achievements at the time. But it has the World Fair coming up in Chicago, and Jimmy Corrigan's grandfather, who is known as James Corrigan, in the late 1800s as a boy, who has a very similar problem where, he's kind of sheltered, he has trouble, being social, making friends. But what makes this book interesting is Chris Ware's layouts. Mm-hmm. He'll do like a 30-panel page grid, and it shouldn't work because it's 30 panels, and it should look very cluttered. But the way he pulls it off is just brilliant. Mm-hmm. Like, he'll have, let me show you. Just every single page has, like, look at this. This page right here perfectly shows his thought process. Oh, so you really get into his head. Show the camera. You really get into the character's head really well. And, it just, I don't know, Chris Ware does a really good job exploring this character. You really understand what makes him tick. You really start to feel for him, even though he's this kind of wall of a character that's hard to relate to, because he's just this guy. He's a simpleton. He really doesn't understand other people. He doesn't understand how to talk to other people, and he really doesn't understand. Like I know that there's a lot of people our age that are not very social, but you still kind of have a grasp on how to talk to people. Right. But it's people like Jimmy Corrigan, no fucking clue. This guy is really sad. It's just a really sad, melancholy book. But the way Chris Ware executes the story is what makes it worthwhile to read.
Next book I wasn't too particularly fond of, but I still want to mention it because I like the themes of it. Was Sea of Red by Rick Remender. So, the plot of these books was the reason why I picked up the complete slipcase, but I just wasn't too crazy about it. Essentially, what it's about is a pirate ship sinks in the year 1533, and it's a cursed pirate ship. Okay. And years later, a film crew is making a documentary about, I think they're just making a movie, and they stumble upon one of the old crew members from the 1500s who is now a zombie. Okay. So he lived that whole time. And they get him aboard the ship, and they're like, "What are we doing? He's a fucking zombie!" And all this stuff. And so essentially, it's the film crew trying to figure out what to do with this cursed pirate ship that they found. And ultimately, it sounds very cool. I really like the premise, and I like the art. It's all sepia tones.
Okay.
But just the one thing that really took me out of it was the pirate dialogue, because it's written exactly how you imagined, like, pirates to speak. But I couldn't understand a thing they were saying. It was like, Yerby, Herbie, Scurvy, and that was like the whole bubble, and I was like, I don't know what that means, and it didn't really translate the pirate speech that well.
Okay.
So there were some parts where I was reading it along fine, and then whenever they would talk about the cursed cruise ship and like people on the ship, I was like, what the fuck did that gentleman just say? And like, I couldn't even decipher some of it. But I mean, obviously, Rick Remender has written other things that are very, very interesting.
Fear Agent, Deadly Class.
Yeah. So if you are a fan of his work, I would recommend this to you, because maybe you can translate the pirate speech better than I can. But yeah, I wasn't entirely thrilled with this series, but I like the idea of a film crew stumbling along a cursed pirate ship. So pick this up if this sounds like something you might like, because I don't like everything, and neither does anybody else.
So my final pick was actually one of my favorite books that I read in 2019. It has breached my top 5 all time, and I'm not saying a lot. I've read a lot of books.
He has a top 50 list of his favorite books of all time, and all of them are 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I've read a lot of books.
We should link the list.
I'll link the list.
In the description, Jake's top 50 list will be
This
there.
one's like number 4 or 5 on that list, and it is David Lapham's crime comics masterpiece, Stray Bullets.
I remember, he has not stopped talking about this book. Like, for real, has not stopped.
It's so good. It's so good. It's so good, I bought a second copy, because David Lapham was selling signed and sketched copies. So in my little copy right here, we got a David Lapham signed it himself, to Jake, best wishes. It's a drawing of Monster, who's a reoccurring character. And I say reoccurring because there really is no main cast of characters in this book.
Oh.
So Stray Bullets, it's divided into 6 chapters, and each of the 6 chapters has a one-shot story that explores... Actually 6 chapters composed of one-shot stories.
Oh, okay.
So each one-shot will further explore like one of the main characters, because there are only like probably like 2 or 3 like really, really reoccurring characters. Really only 1. Stray Bullets is the story of Virginia Applegate / Amy Racecar. She's got 2 names.
Okay.
She's a little girl that goes on the run, and while reading it, you kind of watch her grow up, which is really cool. But it usually explores like a background character you'll see in the background of like one other issue. So each character in Stray Bullets feels really fleshed out, and the world feels alive, because you have all these characters with realized backstories, with different motives, different personalities, and everyone's unique, which is so awesome. Like, I don't know how David Lapham went, yeah, I think I'm going to just... Every character, like, you know, gets their own issue. So if you just see like a character you think looks cool in the background, he's probably going to get his own issue.
That's really cool.
And some characters get more than one issue. They'll be side characters in another issue if they're a main character in their own issue. So some characters really get fleshed out, and then you never see them again, because that's what life is like. You meet people, you know, get them to spill their personality onto you, and you really get to understand and like know someone, and then they're just gone. That happens in this book all the time. And that's so cool.
Yeah.
And David Lapham really tells it. Each issue is told in this 8-panel grid style. But this sets up like a really cool side by side, because it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's like call and response, and it has a really cool pace and flow to each issue. That just is unmatched. I've never seen a book do that. That has, because this is like 41 issues, and each of the issues is done in this 8-panel grid, and I never get tired of it.
Yeah.
Because it's just such an engaging pace. It's such an engaging just layout too, because he packs so much into each of these simple layouts, and it's stupid. Like, I don't know how he does it.
PHONOGRAM, written by Kieron Gillen and James McKelvie, follows protagonist David Cole through a world inhabited by phonomancers, or musical magicians, who channel their powers through the Britpop music scene.
So my favorite part about this book is the second arc. It's 7 issues long. It's called The Singles Club.
Okay.
And it's the same exact story told in the same place from 7 different points of view.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and they're all at a club. So at one point, one of the points of view was from the DJ, and it's awesome because it's the same exact shot, just over and over, because they're only at the DJ booth.
I like that.
Yeah, and it's him and one other girl, so that whole issue was my favorite, because it's just, because you would think it gets boring, but in earlier issues, characters interact with the DJ, so eventually you see the old characters come in and interact with them really and do stuff. Yeah, so it's really cool. But if you're into music-related things, Kieron Gillen in general, I'm really looking forward to reading his Darth Vader
stuff. Is so good.
I have to really get into the Star Wars comics. Anyway, yeah, I really like this book. I think it's cool. The magical part is definitely, you can see where Wicked and Divine comes from. Yeah. With the whole music and magic sort of thing. But yeah, this is a really cool read. I highly recommend it. And I believe you can get it in 3 trades if you can't find the hardcover. There's 3 trades
also out. With Matt Wilson and Clayton Cowles also work on everything these two do together. Mm-hmm. Matt Wilson's the colorist, Clayton Cowles is the letterer.
Oh, cool.
Actually, I read the introduction for this, and Matt Wilson went back and colored the first part. Because the first part was originally published in black and white.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Thank you for keeping in tune with Freshly Brewed Comics, the show where we drink coffee and talk about our favorite books.
And tune in next time, where we'll go over some of the solicitations for 2020 and talk about our most anticipated releases. Mm-hmm.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.
And we will be coming out with more content.
Yes! Clink!
Pick it up if you're interested by my elevator pitch of Sea of Red. Wasn't too negative. I didn't want to be like too negative. I was like, good.
That was good.
All right, Jake. So, what is your final pick for
my final pick?
Recent reads.
Oh, you start.
I wasn't even done talking. No.
Start.
So, Jake, what is your final pick for this week?